Hello everyone and welcome to the Helsinki Green Talk webinar. This event has been organized by the Portuguese Embassy in Helsinki in partnership with the Finnish Embassy in Lisbon and the European Investment Bank. It is a pleasure to have all of you here today, and the webinar will consist of a series of talks given by our distinguished speakers, followed by a Q&A session at the end. To propose a question, please type it in the message box at any time. And if you want to direct it to a particular speaker, feel free to include that information in your submission. In the end, we will pick as many questions as time allows. Finally, in order to avoid technical problems or a choppy connection, please remember to keep your microphone on mute and your video turned off while someone else is speaking. Our first speaker is the Portuguese ambassador in Finland and Estonia, Mr. Francisco Vaspato. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hello. Yes, now I'm okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today here to this Green Talk from Helsinki. As my colleague Rafael Oliveira already mentioned, this talk that we are organizing in collaboration with the Embassy of Finland in Lisbon and the representation of the European Investment Bank in Helsinki is planned in preparation for the high-level Green Investment Forum. The Portuguese presidency of the Council of the EU will hold in Lisbon on the 23rd of April, and for which all of you are cordially invited. This high-level forum will bring leading government and business figures, international and development financial institutions, private sector and academia together to discuss how to strengthen green investment between the EU and Africa, creating pathways towards sustainable and intensive development. Climate change is one of the most significant threats that humankind faces today, and we can only react adequately to this, as well as to the COVID pandemic effects, through a global and coordinated response anchored in a strategic dialogue between all the stakeholders involved, creating new opportunities for both Africa and Europe. It is time to build back better and greener, with joint efforts to sustainable and green recoveries from both in Europe and in Africa. While it is not a simple task, it is one that we need to undertake. So today, this afternoon in Helsinki, we will try to start this discussion presenting the Finnish perspective and preparing the way, building up the momentum for the high-level forum at the end of April, raising awareness in Finland for the challenges of green transition in Europe and Africa that lay ahead of us. We will center our discussions here in a topic very dear to Finland, and in which this country has a great and successful experience that can be very useful for other European and as well as African countries, circular economy. We will try to share experiences and also opportunities to mobilize private and public capital and expertise towards green transition in Africa and in Europe. After some introduction words from my dear colleague and friend, Ambassador Satu Svikari-Kleven, the Finnish ambassador in Lisbon, we will have the opportunity to hear His Excellency, the Portuguese Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, Francisco André, talking about green investment in Africa. Then, His Excellency, the Under Secretary of State for Development Policy of Finland, Elina Kaukko, will address green growth and circular economy in development, and what can the EU member states like Finland do. Then Mari Pansar from the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra will address the circular economy in Africa. And to conclude, Elina Kamenitzer from the European Investment Bank with some closing remarks and thoughts on the Green Deal and EIB's elevated climate action ambitions, linking this to circular economy. I hope we will have still opportunity for some Q&A, and that you all enjoy very much this discussion and find it useful in preparation for the high-level forum at the end of the month. So now I will give the floor to my colleague and friend Satu Svikari-Kleven. Please, Satu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I'm very, very happy to join Ambassador Francisco Vaz-Pato in wishing you all warmly welcome to this Green Talk. And I also wish to thank Ambassador Francisco very much for the initiative to organize this special talk in Finland and for inviting us, the Embassy of Finland in Lisbon, to join this effort. Very much appreciated. I've been very privileged to follow closely the Portuguese EU presidency since the beginning of this year, since I'm based in Lisbon. A fair, green and digital transition is in the heart of the Portuguese presidency. And it has been visible in many concrete ways, be it ambitious legislative efforts, policy reforms or advocacy. And another theme of the Portuguese presidency that I'm very fond of is global Europe, a Europe that is open to the world, seeking to further strengthen partnerships and with special emphasis on the importance of the relationship between EU and Africa. I fully agree that this is a very timely focus, a very welcome focus. And it proves again that Finland and Portugal think very much similarly in these issues. Only 2 weeks ago, Finland launched its Africa strategy with the purpose of strengthening the political and economic partnership with African countries and actors. The starting point being Africa's increasingly important role as a close neighbor and a close partner. And during the drafting and preparation of the strategy, it became very clear that there is huge interest in Finland in expanding and further deepening relations with African countries and African organizations and companies, be it in the fight against climate change, promoting of other sustainable development goals, or stepping up economic and investment cooperation. So I must say that I was very, very pleased when I learned that one of the key events of the Portuguese EU presidency will be the EU-Africa Green Investment Forum in late April in Lisbon and online. I think we are all very grateful for the Portuguese presidency for creating this platform where we in Europe can hear directly from African organizations, African companies, the high-level political representatives from African countries about the visions that they have right now and how they see the prospects for further cooperation, and of course for networking and getting to know each other. So I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us in Europe seeking to increase our cooperation with African countries and companies and other actors. And also, let me just finally once more thank again the Portuguese presidency for providing this platform today, where we can present some of Finland's strong areas of expertise and experiences, the circular economy. So I'm very happy for this cooperation, and today's talk I hope will inspire all of us in the audience to seek concrete ways of cooperating between Finland, Portugal, EU and African countries, and to join the event on the 23rd of April. But most importantly today, very much looking forward to hear more about this initiative from the Portuguese presidency and the EIB and from the Finnish expertise in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Our next speaker is the Portuguese Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, Mr. Francisco André. Your Excellency, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, allow me first of all to thank my colleague Alina for joining us in this debate today. I also want to thank the participation of Mary Pensar, whose thoughts on the circular economy transition in Africa I'm anxious to hear. I extend our appreciation to both our ambassadors, Sukari Kleven, and also to my dear friend Francisco Vaz Pato, and their teams, to whom we owe the organization of this event. This time around, also to thank the participation of Elina Kamentitzer from the European Investment Bank, our key partner and also co-organizer in this outreach and this subject. Dear friends, today we are almost all through the 30 days of dialogue between Africa and the EU to discuss investment and financing opportunities for a green transition. This is a record-breaking round of intense, substantive, and also encompassing debates organized in different African and European capitals, leading up to the high-level EU-Africa Forum on the Green Investment on the 23rd of April in Lisbon. An ambitious and innovative exercise of climate diplomacy and outreach. I am proud to take part in this process and particularly pleased to participate in a session dedicated to circular economy, a concept that my government holds close to its heart. Allow me now just to briefly frame this initiative in the context of the ongoing Portuguese presidency of the Council. And of course, rest assured, I will simply highlight two elements that define the lining up of those priorities from the very first hour. Two elements that gain further significance in the current context and in view of a balanced post-pandemic recovery. I am referring to the cross-cutting priorities of climate and digital transitions on one side, and, of course, on the other side, the paramount importance of the African continent in our relationship with the rest of the world. Against this backdrop, it was only natural that Portugal and the European Investment Bank joined hands in organizing the forum on the 23rd of April, as well as the Green Talks leading up to it. It is difficult to imagine other initiative that would better reflect the overall objectives of the Portuguese presidency, as well as the specific objective of consolidating a mutually benefiting partnership between Africa and Europe, paving the way to the next European Union, African Union Summit. In a few words, this is all about two continents working together and side by side to achieve common objectives in terms of sustainable development and green investment. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa carries little responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions, while it is paying a high price for the dramatic consequences of climate change. This is an unfair and an undeniable reality. And this is precisely what we are trying to address during this 30-day dialogue on green transition and investment, by converging on solutions that maximize potential and mitigate shortcomings of different level playing fields. Only together we will succeed. People normally see green investment as a constraint responding exclusively to an environmental-driven agenda, whether in Africa or elsewhere, but we must tackle this idea head-on. We know today that besides an environmental concern, green investment is mostly an opportunity for economic and social development, particularly in Africa. The underlying transformation of a successful green transition can be easily translated to growth and job creation, as well as more competitiveness. To Africa, the opportunity to speed up and converge should be a source of added motivation to engage in their continent's green transition. It is a synonym of an unprecedented transformation across the whole cycle of economic activity. It includes production means, consumption patterns, value chains, and final disposal. To Europe, the point of departure should nourish an effective obligation to support that process. Green transition entails a shift to a more sustainable and sustainable paradigm, sustainable paradigm. The African continent departs from a unique position to shortcut and maximize its transformation potential. Although fragmentation is in some way the opposite of the forces behind a successful green transition, I will take the risk of asking you to think of specific sectors, such as mobility, urban planning, housing, or energy. These are sectors where green champion projects are emerging a bit everywhere. Sectors where we see initiatives, both public and private, that translate the potential of the green transition. Sectors where, with very limited imagination, one can see Africa excel in the transformation process. But there is more. Many African economic ecosystems are characterized by an excessive degree of specialization. Green transition brings to these economies a unique chance to accelerate a long-sought process of economic diversification. Indeed, economic diversification is perfectly aligned with the driving forces of green transition and what it entails in terms of energizing local value chains, reducing dependency, efficiency gains, attraction of productive investment, job creation, and generation of inclusive growth and income. My dear friends, support Africa's green transition and reformative potential is an imperative to all. It is an endeavor that requires considerable investments, and it is only natural that all eyes turn to governments when financing is mentioned. No doubt that public money will inevitably be vital in pooling the financing required for such transformation. However, national budgets are incapable of covering all the needs given the dimension of the task ahead of us. Shifting paradigm to greener economies requires innovative and encompassing resource mobilization, one that brings in the contribution of other possible actors such as international financial institutions, banks, investment funds, development agencies, and multilateral actors. Public money can play a decisive role in pooling, levering, and catalyzing other resources. Summing up, when discussing green transition, we are not only talking about environment. Above all, we are talking about social and economic opportunities in a process of global transformation and convergence in delivering the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement, a process that is long, yet its success depends on the decisions we take now. And I will end here, reaffirming the motto of the Portuguese presidency, time to act for a fair, green, and digital recovery. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And now we are going to hear from the Finnish Undersecretary of State for Development Policy, Ms. Elina Kauko. Your Excellency, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, State Secretary, ambassadors, colleagues and friends of green growth and Africa and the EU-Africa cooperation. And thank you, Portugal and the EU presidency, Portuguese EU presidency, for taking the initiative. This is really a perfect time to tackle these issues. We are, as we all know, we are living through a time when both Europe and Africa need to tackle a pandemic with its socio-economic consequences and tackle climate change and work towards the sustainable development goals and do all this at the same time. And as we know, many of our African partners face all these challenges without the recovery packages we and our economies enjoy currently. There are many names given to these efforts already internationally: Building Back Better at the UN, Building Back Better and Greener, as we Nordics like to point out, or GRIT, Green, Resilient and Inclusive Development at the World Bank Group. For the EU and for member states, Green Deal and green growth and circular economy are, of course, already normal household goals and part of the genetics of our work. And for all, the pandemic has only underlined the need for a more sustainable economy that increases resilience of economies, societies, and people to external and internal shocks. We've learned also a lot in the past year. Climate and biodiversity are existential questions both for Europe and Africa alike. An adequate response is only possible if we manage to change the way we consume and produce commodities and services and decarbonize energy production by smart use of renewable energy and energy efficiency. It is necessary to rethink the way our economies work and aim at a systemic change. There are 800 million people in the world at the moment still without electricity. That's a huge number. You can imagine what it would mean if they would answer their energy needs by increasing the use of fossil fuels. In Europe, switching to a more circular use of steel, plastics, aluminium, and cement would cut industrial emissions by more than half by 2050. And green recovery and building back better and greener is not only about climate and biodiversity. They are about smarter and more resilient economies and economic growth. The State Secretary mentioned job creation, and we too see circular economy as a way to diversify the economy, create new jobs and skills, as well as increase the value generated by natural resources and raw materials, while stopping also the overconsumption. Circular activities possess high employment potential also in Africa. Digitalization and innovation create new opportunities, but the transition also involves some jobs becoming obsolete. A systemic change can often be disruptive. While transforming, certain activities need to be phased out and replaced by something new. We need to take this seriously too and consider how to minimize negative consequences, including negative social consequences and including consequences for women, youth, and people in vulnerable situations. Just transitions need to be key principles in supporting African partner countries to build back better and greener and build better and greener alike. What can the EU and member states do for greener growth and for a more circular economy globally and with our African partners? First of all, I think there is still a need to raise awareness about the opportunities. World Circular Economy Forum, created by the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra, has been a Finnish contribution to raising awareness and advancing globally the transition and to bring together businesses, governments, and experts to share their best practices. The next event will take place in the Netherlands. Actually, I believe it's next week already, and it will explore the link between circular economy and climate, and particularly boost regional cooperation and inclusiveness in the work. For the EU, circular economy has become part of its genetics and quite some time already. It has been part of our regular work. For Finland, the goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2035 and also National Strategic Circular Economy Program pave the way ahead. Many of our African partner countries have become active within the African Circular Economy Alliance, ACEA, which Finland joined to be able to be a better partner in these issues for them. And this initiative is already a few years old, actually. Trade policies, development policies, and funding and investments need to point coherently into the right direction. Multilateral institutions have a key role to play, both in normative policy and funding efforts. This is, of course, about the EU itself, its ability to react and support Africa and green growth. But it is also very much about the OECD and WTO in promoting fair trade rules and good standardization. This is about African Union and the continental and regional free trade in Africa. Recently, Finland organized a webinar as a part of our WTO stock-taking event on aid for trade, and the event explored opportunities for sustainable economic development and transition to circular economy. The role of the international financing institutions was meant already, the EIB and EBRD, the World Bank Group, the regional development banks, they are key in these areas, definitely. The EU and member states can also be active as catalysts. Finland is partnering with the African Development Bank and the African Circular Economy Alliance to advance the principles of circular economy on the African continent. Together with the bank and the alliance, we support efforts by African countries to design and implement cross-sectoral circular economy roadmaps and concrete projects that promote entrepreneurship and job creation. Through development funding, Finland supports public and private sector capacity building, responsible businesses, and circular economy innovations that provide solutions to everyday problems of local communities and create new decent jobs as well. FinFund supports private companies to implement concrete circular economy investments in several low-income and even fragile countries. Through special funds and platforms such as the Fin Partnership or Developing Market Platform, we are supporting partnerships that co-create new enterprises based on innovative, locally driven circular economy concepts. Through our support to civil society actors, we at the same time strengthen the voice of civil societies and workers in formal and informal sectors to ensure that no one is left behind. The Regional Energy and Environment Partnership Trust Fund, and I wanted to flag this a little bit here, it has been working for over 10 years in 15 Southern and Eastern African countries. Through this program, we have financed early stage companies with innovative business models that use circular economy principles to produce various energy products and services, including for electricity, cooking, cooling, heating, and mobility alike. A country of the size of Finland can do some meaningful things, but we also felt that it is important Africa is much better known in Finland. And that's why Finland's brand new National Africa Strategy has been recently published. The aim is to raise awareness in Finland of the 21st century Africa and encourage different stakeholders, including businesses, to be more active in partnering in Africa. As Ambassador Satu Suikkari-Kleven already said, increasing political and economic interaction with African countries is also the special focus. In addition to our traditional priorities such as peace and security, development, gender and education, the strategy has a strong focus on trade relations, climate change, green transition and digitalization. Circular economy and clean energy offer many opportunities for mutually beneficial partnership with Africa. We need to recognize that private sector is not only key to stronger economies, but also key to more sustainable carbon-free economies. Therefore, trade and investments and green and digital transitions are a priority. I think they are a priority for all of us. Taking into account the EU's ambitious climate targets and African countries' efforts to diversify their economies, there's a lot of potential here for partnerships. More development financing and commercial private financing will need to be directed in these sectors in the future, in coming years. The African Continental Free Trade Area can create new market opportunities and is making African countries even more interesting investment destinations. The EU is Africa's biggest trading, investment and development partner, but there's a lot more the EU and African countries could do together in tackling climate change and promoting sustainable development and green future and green growth. Africa's geographic proximity to Europe, the changing global landscape, and many challenges that we face together underscore the value of a deeper and broader cooperation. And thank you, Portugal, for taking the initiative during your presidency, an initiative for a better and more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is the Director of Sustainability Solutions of the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra, Dr. Mari Pansar. Dr. Pansar, you now have the floor.
So, State Secretary, Ambassadors, Under Secretary of State. At first, I want to take the opportunity and acknowledge the Portuguese presidency for providing this very important platform for discussing about EU-Africa circular economic cooperation. And I also want to take the opportunity and congratulate Portugal for the great work done in field of advancing the circular economy in the EU and also in your country. So in my presentation, I will talk about the circular economy transition in Africa. And I will focus on experiences that the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra has had. And I will also talk why it is very important that the rest of the world will also collaborate with Africa in this field. But in the beginning, I would like to shortly introduce you to Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund. So Sitra is a 53 years old organization, and we are all often cited to be the future house of Finland. So Sitra is actually a combination of a fund and a think-do tank, and we are under the direct control of the Finnish Parliament. And Sitra, we get our annual budget from the returns of our endowment capital and venture capital investments, and these we invest in future relevant projects. And Sitra's main aim is to increase the competitiveness of Finland and therefore sustainability solutions, and also the circular economy is very high on our agenda. So we have been working in the field of the circular economy since 2015. And Finland, together with Sitra, for example, has compiled the first national circular economy roadmap in the whole world. And based on Finland's roadmap process and our experiences, Sitra has developed a guidebook to help other countries to prepare their own circular economy roadmaps. And our guidebook is in use also in Africa. We have also built several tools for businesses to move towards the circular economy, and we have developed and tested the learning materials and courses together with all educational levels in Finland, because education is really in the heart of the circular economy transition. I also want to mention the World Circular Economy Forum community. So we organize the World Circular Economy Forums with our international stakeholder network, including the European Commission, every year in different parts of the world. And the forums gather together thousands of circular economy decision makers and business leaders, and together we discuss how to mainstream the circular economy globally. And the World Circular Economy Forums is also one of the key platforms for the discussions of the Global Alliance of the Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency, which was launched by the European Commission, United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, and Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. The target of this Global Alliance is to combine regional collaboration networks and identify the knowledge needed to scale up circularity, as well as spread good policy practices. And advancing the circular economy in Africa has also been high on the agenda of World Circular Economy Forums. For example, in 2019, we organized an Africa-focused session, and in 2020 online forum, there was an African Circular Economy Alliance session. And next week, as Under Secretary of State mentioned, on April 15th and 16th, Sitra, together with the government of Netherlands, co-host the World Circular Economy Forum Plus Climate event. And there will also be an African Circular Economy Alliance annual meeting session on national circular economy roadmap building. So, ladies and gentlemen, today it is widely understood that global circular economy is necessary in tackling biodiversity loss, climate change, and depletion of natural resources. But what can be the role of a small country like Finland? So in Finland, there lives only 0.75 per mil of the world's population. However, we believe that we can develop good solutions that can spread globally, and with the right kind of support and funding, especially developing economies can leapfrog onto forerunner positions in the circular economy. Also, trade and development policy in Finland and the EU can be leveraged in advancing the global transition. So, as known, Africa is currently the world's second fastest growing region. African population is expected to double to be about 2.5 billion in 2050, which will represent about 26% of world's total population. And these numbers not only provide the large market potential for the circular economy, but they also demonstrate the urgency of achieving sustainable development goals alongside economic growth in Africa. And supporting Africa in sustainable and fair circular growth will eventually be one of the factors which will help the whole world to achieve our climate and biodiversity targets. So the circular economy offers massive potential for sustainable economic growth, as well as improving livelihoods, well-being, and prosperity in Africa. However, due to a wide range of challenges, which I want to emphasize that we all countries have, only approximately 10% of waste generated is formally recycled today, with remaining 90% ends up in the environment or landfills. So this can also be seen as a huge business potential. But at this critical time, where science has given us roughly a 10-year window to preserve human living conditions on the planet and simultaneously end poverty, the urgency for transformative interventions delivering large-scale solutions have never been more critical. So, properly designed circular economy solutions offer the global community alternatives to create inclusive wealth while safeguarding the planet. And circular economy in Africa represents opportunity to achieve sustainable development goals, improving social, economic, and environmental sustainability, while also boosting competitiveness, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Next, some words about the innovation enablers in Africa. So as mentioned earlier, there are huge circular opportunities for Africa, and these are especially in fields of waste management, renewable energy, technological innovations, sustainable tourism, agriculture, education, and job creation. And the first opportunity is waste management. And this is currently the main focus of circularity in African countries. The waste management industry has a massive growing market potential, especially in waste handling, waste treatment technologies, electronic waste treatment, and hazardous waste treatment. Second opportunity is renewable energy, which is essential cornerstone to adopt circular economy models. So endless resources of solar energy offer great opportunity, as well as wind power, biogas, and bio-waste use. Third opportunity is in manufacturing. New technology would allow manufacturing processes to adopt circularity, as well as make products and manufacturing systems ecologically sustainable and also socially acceptable. Fourth opportunity is agricultural production. So agriculture employs 60% of Africa's labor force. Need for food security and vulnerability of production opens demand for solutions and circular innovations in sustainable agricultural production. Other opportunities including, for example, providing access to safe drinking water, education programs, job creations, and also sustainable tourism. So, ladies and gentlemen, next some words about the policies. On the policy side, the circular economy principles are embedded in the goals of global agendas, including, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, Africa's Agenda 2063, the Paris Agreement on Climate Action, and Africa strategies of the EU and also of Finland. The EU's Africa strategy also provides very strong base to advance the circular economy. The strategy proposes to work together on 5 key global trends, including green transition, digital transformation, sustainable growth and jobs, peace and governance, and also migration and mobility. And as already mentioned earlier, Finland has also a new Africa strategy. And Minister of Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Finland, Mr. Ville Skinnari, has underlined many times the importance of collaboration and possibilities related to circular economy and Africa's low carbon transition. And I also want to mention the trade policies and how they can help the circular economy transition in Africa. So in general, trade and global value chains act as connectors in our globalized economy. The shift to a circular economy should be supported by trade policies. When developing its economy, Africa has a good chance to integrate into sustainable and circular global value chains. This can be seen as a huge opportunity. And the African continental free trade area can boost both trade and circularity on the continent. However, partnerships and support are needed to harness these opportunities, and aid for trade should be targeted towards the circular economy transition. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, finally, to advance all that I have mentioned earlier, we at CITRA support the African Development Bank's African Circular Economy Facility. So this facility was launched in 2019 by the African Development Bank with the participation of the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Nordic Development Fund, and also CITRA. And 5-year programs action start with member countries of African Circular Economy Alliance. There are 5 of those countries. And the overall objective of the facility is to mainstream the circular economy as a development strategy by creating national circular economy roadmaps with relevant stakeholders to help African nations attain their development goals while safeguarding the environment and creating jobs. The objective of the African Circular Economy Facility is to tailor and scale up policies and actions in the whole continent. And the facility aims to mainstream the circular economy as an inclusive green growth strategy to help African nations fulfill their development priorities while meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement, SDGs, and also Africa's Agenda 2063. And a particular attention will be paid on mobilizing investment in circular economy and leveraging African Development Banking financing. And CITRA is supporting this with our expertise. We also provide our expertise, know-how, and experience in helping to raise the ambition level of the work and help in creating the African and also national circular economy roadmaps in Africa. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as a conclusion, I want to emphasize that we at CITRA are very happy that the potential of the circular economy development in Africa has been understood by the EU, by global institutions, and especially by the African countries themselves. So for us, it is an honor and privilege to support this work, which is of most importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pansar. And now we will hear our concluding remarks from the head of the Climate Office in the Operations Directorate at the European Investment Bank, all the way from Luxembourg, Ms. Elina Kamenitzer. Ms. Kamenitzer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. It is my great pleasure and privilege to be contributing to this event today and deliver a few closing remarks on behalf of the European Investment Bank. In this rather short intervention, I will try to shed some light on EIB's ambition to become the EU climate bank, both in and outside the EU, including Africa. I want to nevertheless start by thanking all the distinguished previous speakers for their very interesting and thought-provoking interventions, and of course the Portuguese presidency for championing these green talks and the green development agenda in Africa. That said, I believe we can all agree that we must act now to transform the ways we act, operate, and do business here in Europe and in Africa, so that our economic activities and development efforts start really contributing in a real way to the fight against climate change. While we need to build back better, as mentioned by the previous speakers after the COVID crisis, and leave no one behind on the low carbon pathway, we must strive to decouple economic growth from exploitation of fossil fuels. I invite you to think of this. All the 5 of the warmest years since 1880 have occurred since 2015. We are facing an unprecedented loss of biodiversity and significant threats across global ecosystems. And to tackle the climate emergency, we do need to start making serious progress in moving from this burning platform scenario to more radical and transformational action to address the climate crisis globally. While indeed the situation is rather grave, what is positive is that the fight against climate change is gaining a priority status in people's agendas. According to EIB's recent climate survey, in Europe, 75% of citizens say that the climate change is already having impact on their everyday life. In China, the figure is actually 94%, which is really, really high. And even in the United States, where in past years the climate may not have been very high on the policy agenda, 72% of respondents reported feeling the effects of climate change. In many countries, citizens are naming climate change as one of the top 4 challenges their countries are currently facing. Against this backdrop, the EIB Group announced its ambition to become the EU Climate Bank at the end of 2019. This decision was prompted by the request by the European Council and the EU member states, the shareholders of the EIB, for the EIB Group to play a key role in supporting the implementation of the EU Green Deal and the EU's transition to the net zero targets of 2050. In that context, EIB has defined itself 3 high-level operational targets to guide this green transition. First, since the beginning of this year, all our activities are aligned with our new with the principles and goals of the Paris Agreement. Second, the bank and the EIB Group targets to increase the share of the climate action and environmental sustainability financing up to 50% to our annual financing volume by 2025, which means over 30 billion of investment in green annually. The percentage is currently hovering around 40, so there is still some ground to cover for us to get to our target in a 5 years' time. And finally, through our intervention, the EIB Group aims to support not less than 1 trillion euros worth of additional green investment globally over the critical decade up until 2030. As the EIB is striving to increase its support to climate action, the European Union is directing an unprecedented amount of financial resources toward green investment and developing its regulatory framework geared towards sustainability. While the EU is firmly taking a leading role in the fight against the climate change, we have to remember that EU accounts only some 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. With the same token, Africa is the continent that currently contributes the least to the greenhouse gas emissions, and yet it is arguably the worst hit when it comes to negative impacts of the climate change. Climate change and environmental degradation often has a disproportionate effect on less developed countries and disadvantaged populations, affecting their livelihoods, health, food security, as well as peace and stability in more vulnerable regions. The Commission Vice President Timmermans has repeatedly emphasized that the EU has to take to become better at listening and responding to the climate adaptation needs of the developing world. This underpins the fact that to combat climate change and its impacts, we need global action and engagement of the public sector, but increasingly, and as also highlighted by the previous speakers, of the private sector promoters and investors, as well as the financial industry to promote green investment. The EIB spent good part of 2020 drawing up the so-called Climate Bank Roadmap that will serve as a guide for the bank over the next 5 years in its transition to become EU Climate Bank. The roadmap provides us, among others, a framework for Paris alignment and depicts the direction of travel for business development around the key focus areas of the EU Green Deal. While it is clear that in order to meet the global climate goals, we need to invest in low-cost renewable power, electrification of transport, and in energy efficiency, as well as in decarbonization of industries and green innovation. We also need to significantly increase the financial flows targeted to actions around climate adaptation and resilience to tackle the already evident negative effects of the climate change on economies, businesses, and communities that often are left, and vulnerable communities that are often left more severe, and these impacts are often felt more severely by the developing world. We should leave nobody behind as we progress down the low carbon pathway. In this context, importantly, the Climate Bank Roadmap recognizes the EIB's key role in supporting green transition outside the EU as part of the Team Europe, and highlights the need for an integrated approach to investment that considers both the environmental sustainability and economic as well as social development. EIB has a long-lasting track record in implementing EU mandates and in supporting sustainable development in Africa. Last year, the bank financed investments worth of over 4.5 billion euros in the continent, including those supporting the transition to low-carbon future. As an example, EIB has financed investment in the area of renewable energy, cleaner transport, sustainable agriculture, as well as climate adaptation. With that note, we just heard a very fascinating keynote on circular economy. Supporting the transition to a higher degree of circularity is crucial in achieving global climate and sustainable development goals. By using a variety of instruments at its disposal, including leveraging on EU funds, in the past 5 years, EIB has provided some 2.7 billion euros of co-financing to more than 100 circular economy projects in a variety of sectors. That said, the bank is engaged in supporting a number of African promoters as well to integrate circularity to their own investments, and operating as well as business models, also encouraging more sustainable consumption patterns in the continent. As an example, AIB has joined a number of European partners to promote Clean Ocean Initiative. One of the key objectives of this initiative is to promote the development and implementation of sustainable, viable, and low-carbon projects that reduce plastic waste and microplastics discharge in rivers, seas, and oceans. The goal is to finance 2 billion in public and private sector investment in ocean projects by 2023. The bank has also, in this context, launched an Clean Ocean Project Identification and Preparation Technical Assistance Program with the view of identifying and preparing projects that would contribute to the initiative, in particular in sub-Saharan Africa, targeting specifically the solid waste management sector. I have used most of my time here, and hence I will stop there and end my remarks again, thanking all the distinguished speakers and audience on behalf of the EIB. I will hand over the floor to our kind hosts to moderate the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kamenica. And now we are going to start the Q&A session. We do have a few questions lined up in the Q&A box. And the first one would be very much in the alley of Dr. Pansar and the Finnish Undersecretary of State. The first question that was asked then would be that Finland is known for its great partnership on green initiatives around the world, as the participation on the funds for reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Since climate change is such a central issue, is the support for the development of such initiatives or policies connected to initiatives on reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in African countries a possible strategy to pursue? And we could start with the Finnish Undersecretary of State, Ms. Elina Kaukko.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a very relevant question. The RED Plus is about reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, and this is certainly a part of the big picture in combating climate change and a very possible strategy. Also in Africa, we see the role of the UN system relevant here too. There's been lots of activities with UNDP, FAO, UNEP on these issues linked to the RED Plus in the UN programming angle. And of course, bilaterally also, we worked with FAO, for instance, in Myanmar, which has lots of problems currently. With forest inventories. We work with some of our African partners, definitely in sustainable forest management. So this is a very possible strategy, and the area is hugely relevant in combating climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Pansar, now you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So excellent question, and I want to echo what the Secretary of State mentioned. So this can be a very potential strategy also in Africa, but of course we must see how it can be implemented to kind of local conditions. But in order to tackle the climate change, we need global incentives. So we would need a global price for carbon emissions, and then the developed countries must take care of the climate financing that they have promised to provide countries in global south, including African countries. But then we also need different kind of voluntary actions. So I would welcome all the initiatives at least to be tested. And this testing can be done in smaller scale. And if it works, then it can be scaled up in the whole continent.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now we can move on to our next question, which is directed to also Dr. Pansar. You mentioned in your presentation the ACEA, and the person asking this was just a little bit curious concerning the collaboration between CITRA and the ACEA issue, and what was asked here is that is whether there are any specific joint initiatives or projects that you would like to elaborate on or highlight more for this conference.
Thank you so much, Scotty. Very welcome and good question. So we are working closely with African Circular Economy Alliance, and especially we are helping the 5 countries that are partners of this alliance to build their national circular economy roadmaps. As I mentioned in my presentation, so we at CITRA have made a very kind of comprehensive guidebook, how different countries taking into account their local circumstances can develop the national strategies. And this is what we are doing. So we are not involved in any specific projects, but helping the governments to do their national plans. And of course, I'm very happy to tell more in privately about this.
Perfect. That's a very good answer, and certainly adds a nice bit of information to the talk today. The next question that I have is for the Portuguese Secretary of State, Mr. Francisco André, and the question is as follows: what is the role of technology in the relations between the EU and Africa in the green transition, and what is the role of European governments in all this, especially the Portuguese one?
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to refer to that because alongside with the investment that we have been mentioning, technology is a fundamental pillar for the green transition, as we are all aware. And this provides me also for the occasion to refer to digitalization as another priority of the European Union presidency. In fact, digitalization is a priority and it's a key to technological development and dissemination. It provides us with an unprecedented opportunity to create and enable environment for innovation and to accelerate technology transfer. It can also play a pivotal role in promoting long-term sustainable economic growth and development. This is something that we should all be aware of and to take a very important look, both private and public sector. And from the public side, it's up to us to assure the conditions that the investment in digitalization is also aligned with this ambition that we have on green transition. This will be also a subject of one of the panels on the forum on the 23rd of April. And I would like also to use this opportunity before the closure of this initiative today, not only to thank everyone that participated, both my colleagues here in the panel, as also the people that watched us at home, and to say that we really expect you to be present virtually, of course, on the 23rd of April for this forum on green investment between Europe and Africa. I'd like to thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now we have a three-way question here that could be asked to the Finnish Under-Secretary of State, the Portuguese Secretary of State, and the EIB representative today. We can start with the EIB because it was our last speaker. And what are the rules? And the question is, what are the routes that the EIB investments are directed, could be directed to companies, specific companies or investment projects, and whether these whether this directing of investments and funds could be made through EU programs, or if there is a centralized way to get information on those investment fluxes. Ms. Kamenica, the floor is yours. And you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I tried to be brief, although I could speak about that topic for a longer period of time. First, I would invite the audience to log into EIB's website, where there is abundance of information on our projects, as well as the conditions under which we finance. But just generally speaking, we are a policy-driven institution, so all our projects and investments need to contribute to our priority objectives that are derived from the EU key policies. On the other hand, we are also a bank, so the investments that we finance have to be economically and technically sound, as well as then meet our environmental and social standards. And as I mentioned from the beginning of the year, our projects, all our investments need to be aligned with our low carbon framework, which represents the alignment with the Paris Agreement. But we look at each project on its own merits, and would of course be happy to assess and give further feedback on individual investments on a bilateral basis. Then about the EU programs, we are one of the key partners for the Commission in leveraging on EU funds, and we do leverage these funds through development of financial instruments for specific purposes. One of the key lighthouse examples may be the EFSI, the European Fund for Strategic Investment, that benefited from EU financing, and through which we were able to leverage an unprecedented amount of funding for projects and inside the EU in particular. But that also goes for outside the EU, where we leverage on the EU mandates, thereby supporting the EU policy objectives. So while we are not a conduit for EU programs per se, but we are leveraging on EU funding, both in terms of financing and blending, but also in terms of advisory, the Commission being one of our key partners in funding our advisory activities. But again, I invite everybody to consult our internet site for further information, or reaching out directly to the bank to get more detailed information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kamenica. That was a very nice answer. And now the question would turn, I think, in a very nice way to the Finnish Under-Secretary of State. And just to do a recap of the question, the idea of the question is whether there would be any specific routes that the Finnish state would use to direct investments to companies or investment projects in Africa, and whether it does this as a single state, or whether it does to do it, or whether it chooses to do it as through the EU programs. And finally, if there is a centralized way to get information in Finland from the Finnish government on such investment programs. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I hope you can hear my voice. There's a problem clearly with a camera at the moment. Yes, indeed, the EU is a big funder, and the bank is a huge funder as well. So it is wise always to look at the opportunities provided by the European Union. There's also national funding instruments available, I guess, by many member states, and this is also the case with Finland. We have a special development funding agency, FinFund, which is focusing on funding which is related to development goals, and usually I would say 100% climate sustainable investments, and their special focus has been also in Africa. We have other instruments as well when it comes to public procurements by developing countries. There's also instruments for companies that are partnering with African companies. So there's actually a flurry of instruments available here from small scale to larger scale investments. And the website of FinFund is the useful source, and also the website of the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There is a special section for development funding instruments as well. I think in the SDG world, we need to look at all kinds of funding that are needed for supporting sustainable development goals. This has definitely a lot to do with other sources than ODA, than official development funding as well. We need to be better in leveraging private funding, and blended funding is definitely a key. We, for instance, set up a fund together with the IFC. This is a climate fund which invests in Africa and elsewhere. Every time a climate relevant renewable energy projects or circular economy projects, it's a joint fund with the IFC with the idea of leveraging also private funding and actually have a greater impact and make greater investments. So there's lots of options available actually, but we also encourage always private investments to follow the public investments. Thank you.
Thank you. A very nice mention of private and blended funds. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that they are part of the discussion, and thank you very much for bringing it up. It's a very useful information. Our next question is directed to Dr. Pansar, and it goes as follows. How much collaboration does CITRA have with civil society organizations in Africa in terms of awareness creation about the circular economy? Are there any specific projects in that direction or plans going that way? Dr. Pansar, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the excellent question. So the importance of civil society in the transition towards the circular economy and low carbon society is of utmost importance. But unfortunately, not yet we have been collaborating with the civil society organizations in Africa. But for Europe and Canada, we have developed tools how the citizens can live more sustainably under the planetary boundaries, and we are planning to scale up this concept also to global south. So maybe there can be some tools how we could also collaborate with the civil society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next question is also directed to Dr. Pansar. It concerns trade policy. I'm also going to direct it later on to the Finnish Under Secretary of State. And the question goes as follows: is whether is that trade policy was mentioned as a tool to promote sustainability and the circular economy. Can economic partnership agreements have an increased role in that sense, or should we move to another model?
So the challenges related to the global sustainability crisis are so kind of acute and serious. So solutions how we can mitigate climate change and accelerate the transition towards the circular economy must be embedded in all policies. And I see that they should also play a very important role in trade policies, because the trade policies, they can hinder or they can promote the use of, for example, circular materials in different parts of the world.
Yes, thank you very much. And now I would like to pose that same question to the Finnish Undersecretary of State, Ms. Elina Kaukku. And just to recap the question, it's is how economic partnership agreements can have an increased role in promoting sustainability and the circular economy, or whether this is not a good way to go about it.
Thank you for the question, and I believe it was me saying that trade policies are an important element in all this, and this is, I think this is a very, very important point of view. Mari Pantsar mentioned it's sustainability, climate sustainability is an integral part of trade policy as well. And if it were not, I think we would be on a much weaker ground. It is about the way we see the transformation, and we need to look at every method to promote sustainability and world trade, global trade, regional trade also is a key issue here. I would like to flag also standardization, because it is when we look at circular economy and the opportunities there, I think standardization is a key issue. We could, for instance, look at plastics and recyclability of plastics. I think the EU has been active here already, and this is a very good example of a case where actually the EU could influence more towards global standardization via its own internal standardization also, and make sure that circular economy gets moves ahead better. So that's an important element as well.
Excellent. That's a very nice mention of standardization procedures and how they can play a very important role in promoting the circular economy and sustainability. Now, I do have one final question here for Ms. Kamenitsa, and it's a little bit of a general question, but I feel like it should be an interesting one to ask. The question is as follows. What do you think is the role of financing and finance in promoting sustainable growth that also improves quality of life and living standards? Also whether there are any specific channels that the EIB explores in that direction.
Thank you. It is a very wide question and widely debated at the moment. What is the role of financial sector in indeed redirecting financial flows to green? And I think my short answer is that I think the role is really crucial. And we see already some of the larger financial players and investors moving towards greener and more sustainable investment strategies. At the same time, investors are looking for green assets. So I think green is being mainstreamed in the financial industry, but there is still a lot of capacity building to be done. Also, we talked about standardization and transparency to avoid greenwashing. And here I would like to mention the EU's efforts on the taxonomy. And I think that is also something that the EU is well placed to promote globally, because before we have more transparency around the green and what constitutes green, it is more complicated to indeed channel these financial flows to truly green and sustainable investment. With that note, while green is, I want to be positive, is being mainstreamed amongst the financial actors and the financial industry, there is still some significant mileage to go when it comes then linking green to more sustainable social development. And I think there as well, joint efforts on standards and taxonomies would help. as well as capacity building in order to ensure that while we are green, or investors and financial sector is greening up, at the same time they are not doing significant harm and hopefully positively contributing to other SDGs as well. But I see that the train has left the station, but I believe there is still a lot of work to be done. Important work, as I said. I think financial sector will need to play and will play a crucial role in terms of promoting green investment.
Thank you so much for your answer. And with this answer, we have concluded the substantive part of our Green Talk. And now I would like to give to cede the floor to His Excellency, the Portuguese Ambassador in Finland, for thank you remarks. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you very much. And we are coming to an end. I think it was a very interesting session. We had very interesting presentations and very interesting questions. And I hope this was an opportunity to all our audience to get a little bit more acquainted about circular economy and about what we are doing as the Portuguese presidency in this area, looking at the green future of Europe and Africa. And as the Secretary of State from Portugal said, you are all invited to participate in the high-level forum at the end of this month on the 23rd of April. I just want to finish thanking for the presence of our speakers, Your Excellency, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Portugal. Thank you for your presence. Your Excellency, the Secretary, the Undersecretary of State for Development Policy, Ms. Elina Kalku, Dr. Mari Pensar from CITRA, and of course, Ms. Elena Kamenitzer from AIB. Thank you for your presentations. I think it was a very good opportunity for all of us to have you here and to listen to you. So I give the floor back to Rafael, and I hope to see you soon in some other organizations from our embassy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would like to reiterate that it was also for me a pleasure to have you all here today, both panelists and attendees, and we look forward to the continuing dialogue in our Green Talk series, organized by the Portuguese Presidency of the Council of the European Union, the European Investment Bank, and the Portuguese missions throughout the European Union and Africa. Stay safe and see you soon at the high-level forum in Lisbon. I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon and stay safe. So see you all.